Okay, everybody, three things I want to talk about today. This June 12th rumored date for Tesla's robotaxi launch in Austin. I want to talk about the recent Elon Musk speech at SpaceX outlining the vision for SpaceX long-term, colonizing Mars. I think that's a very interesting thing to talk about. And then I also want to talk about Elon stepping away from Doge as his sort of 130 days is up, and some of the things to look out for, because there's some very interesting dynamics starting to appear, which I think are very interesting to think through. So for the June 12th robotaxi launch, what's interesting there is that Elon Musk announced on X that Tesla has been testing unsupervised FSD already in the region in the last few days. This, of course, makes a lot of sense because if they're going to be launching robotaxi on the 12th, supposedly rumor mill, but probably it's going to be around that date from the looks of it. If they're really going to be launching that with an unsupervised fleet where there's no drivers behind the steering wheel and pedal, safety drivers, then it makes perfect sense for them to be testing this without any drivers, truly unsupervised now. There's like a hair hanging from my hair and I can't get it. Okay, got it. And that was one of the big things that people were afraid of, is like, hey, if Tesla launches a robotaxi network, but then there's still people behind the steering wheel and pedals, it's going to be a dud. People are going to be like, what the hell? What are you working on? But we're getting, again, confirmation after confirmation that this launch will really start with 10 to 12 or 20 robotaxis, Model Y's best-selling car in the world, without a person behind the steering wheel and pedal. And this is in 2 weeks. If people follow the Tesla story closely, you all know what 2 weeks means, right? But it's legitimately, we're 2 weeks away from the launch of this thing. It's going to be fascinating to watch the Tesla community, the investing community, just like fly into Austin in the next 4 to 6 weeks to try and test this product, the service from Tesla. If you follow this channel closely, if you follow Tesla closely, you've known this for a long time, is that Tesla's approach is the one that's truly scalable, meaning that Tesla's manufacturing 1.7, 1.8 million, 2 million self-driving cars per year right now with the 8-camera system, with the AI computer in the car and the AI brain at the headquarters. If the Austin launch is successful in the next 6, 8 weeks, 3 months, year, as they get more and more self-driving miles under their belt, more and more situations where the car is going through complex traffic and it's avoiding, let's say, unsafe conditions or being super safe and nothing wrong happening, then that builds the confidence, or should build the confidence, of the investing community to view Tesla's solution as the one that's going to take majority market share. This is something that I keep seeing on X from people that are trying to figure out, how is Tesla going to be competitive in the robotaxi market? And I always see comparisons with, well, Uber is going to try to, they're going to be a competitor because they're going to aggregate all the robotaxi solutions from all the competitors. Waymo is a competitor because they've been doing self-driving for years, which they have been, and they should get tremendous amounts of props for that because their technology is truly state-of-the-art. But the problem is, again, it's unscalable. It's not scalable. And so what we should see being proved out here in the next few weeks in Austin is that Tesla should put to bed this whole notion that there is competition when it comes to self-driving versus their solution. In the case of Waymo, they're targeting 2,000 to 3,000 cars total in their fleet in the next 12 months. Tesla right now has millions of vehicles that will be capable of the self-driving solution that they're launching in Austin. And they're one software update away from beating Waymo at their own game. Not only that, with that scale comes cheaper cost per mile, because Tesla's way of manufacturing those vehicles is significantly cheaper than Waymo, because they only have cameras and a computer in their car, whereas Waymo has tens of thousands of dollars worth of radar and sonar. They don't have sonar, but you know what I'm saying, like LiDAR, ultrasonics, and all these other things that are in their car. That's going to make it significantly more expensive to operate those vehicles. And on top of that, you have HD maps and people making sure that the car is operating safely, and you have to map everything, et cetera, et cetera. Tesla's also going to have, obviously, safety operators, as they should, safety operators, to make sure, at least as they launch and they expand, that nothing goes wrong. But each car is going to cost a fraction to manufacture than Waymo. So right there, the Waymo versus Tesla debate should be put to rest here in the next few weeks, next few months, especially as Tesla very quickly expands. If Tesla can prove that they can go from, say, Austin proper, let's say, a 3-mile radius to a 10-mile radius to a 50-mile radius, and then open it up to San Antonio and then Dallas and then Houston and maybe like Waco and Lubbock and like these smaller cities, not these huge city centers, And they start saying, okay, you can go from San Antonio to Austin, you can go from Austin to Dallas, and we're going to launch in California at the same time, and Florida at the same time, and Nevada and Arizona. That's the type of expansion we should expect from Tesla if we truly think that their solution is scalable. But if that plays out, then the Waymo discussion becomes null and void, because Waymo just can't do that. They don't have enough cars to do that. They don't have the technology to ramp up at that speed and create that many solutions that quickly. Then, as it pertains to Uber, which is something that I keep hearing, is like, well, Uber's, one of my things that I'm, I guess, quote unquote, known for, is that I'm out there always, this has nothing personal against like the people working at Uber, nothing personal against the leadership. It's just in my opinion, the business model is completely broken in the world of self-driving cars. It's like, hey, well, Uber is going to be out there trying to compete against Tesla because they already have the quote unquote fleet of drivers, or the customer base, they have it on lockdown because 100 million plus people use Uber. It's like, okay, so let's think about that logically. We already know that Tesla is not going to give up their network. Elon has openly said it. You cannot operate Tesla as a robotaxi outside of Tesla's network. And that's because Tesla knows that if they operate under their network, they control the entire cost structure. And they'll be significantly more competitive versus competition because they don't have to give up some sort of margin for the company that's managing the app and managing the fleet. They keep it to themselves. And then in addition to that, when they sell a car to a customer, the customer can choose to add the car to Tesla's fleet temporarily, like an Airbnb or like a Turo type solution, right? Like a rental service or a leasing service, or just like, you want to just use the car for a day or two, just as you would on Airbnb, use a house for a day or two. But then Tesla controls that entire pie. It just so happens that that same company is going to be making millions of those cars per year. So they control the production of the self-driving vehicles. Whereas a company like Uber, they're dependent on two things. They're dependent on drivers wanting to put their car on their network as drivers, right? So human drivers, but humans are limited by how many humans are willing to drive, versus Tesla can just manufacture, quote unquote, manufacture the drivers. They just put drivers on the road. There's a couple cute deer over there, little Bambi. Oh my goodness, this deer is psycho. And then the second point is that for Uber to be competitive on the self-driving landscape, they have to court self-driving companies that make the self-driving cars that are willingly deciding to not create their own app, okay? Because they might decide that managing a fleet is too complex, or managing an app is too complex, or those two in tandem is too complex. And so they just give it to Uber and they say, okay, Uber, you take care of that. But by default, those companies that choose to do that will not be competitive against Tesla's solution because they will not have the scale to produce these cars cheaply enough and in high enough quantities to warrant the market to actually start choosing their product versus the Tesla product. Why is that? Each one of those companies that decides to partner with Uber, like let's say Waymo, right now you can hail a Waymo using Uber's app in Austin. And let's say Zoox comes up as well, and other companies say, you can start managing ours. Those companies are choosing to go with Uber because they can't make more than a few thousand of these, if that, per year. When that's the case, the cost per mile for those vehicles is going to be higher than Tesla's because it costs a lot more to build that car, right? It's going to cost $100,000 versus Tesla's $30,000 or $25,000. And on top of that, the scale that Tesla's going to be able to reach with their solution, which is millions of cars per year, versus a Waymo, Zoox, etc. combination that might be 50,000 per year, if that, right? If we take present day numbers and some of the, make some assumptions around projections on how many they're going to make, even if we aggregate the competition, you're not going to be competitive on a cost per mile perspective. You're not going to be competitive on a coverage perspective either, because you're not going to have nearly as many cars as Tesla will to put the cars on the network. And then last but not least, I'm going to push the car here so that it actually makes the left because it's waiting for this guy to make a decision. That was weird. Then you're not going to get the consistency either, because Waymo is going to be dependent on multiple manufacturers to put self-driving cars on their network. Whereas Tesla is just going to be like, you get a Tesla, bro. You get a Tesla. Everybody knows what you're going to get with a Tesla. The screens are going to be similar. The UI is going to be similar. The seats are going to be similar. The performance is going to be basically the same across the vehicles. And that's one thing that is super underrated about Tesla's approach. Waymo, if you ride in a Waymo, you compare it to a Tesla with a Model Y or Model 3 FSD, the latest version, it's a lot smoother than a Waymo. It's not as janky. It's not as like inhuman. It's not as like robotic. Whereas the Tesla solution, it literally acts like a human because it's learned from humans how to drive. It's not a solution where you have a code to tell it how to drive. The human has taught the car how to drive, so it's going to be a lot more natural. It's going to be a lot more comfortable. And so under that scenario, how is Uber competitive against Tesla? It's not competitive. And the people that are trying to convince, others that Uber is going to be competitive, and again, I could be an idiot, and I am an idiot. So I need people to tell me if I'm thinking about this incorrectly. From a logical perspective and an economics perspective, Uber simply will not be able to compete against Tesla because Tesla will make millions of self-driving cars per year at a fraction of the cost of whatever Uber can assemble from competition. And on top of that, Uber's going to have to put a markup on top of those cars because Uber has to make money to operate their fleet. So how is Uber competitive? And so if you look at the market, so what happened with the market when it was announced, rumored, that Tesla's going to launch their robotaxi network in Austin on June 12th? Uber stock went down 4%, which is like, if you think about what happened when it was reported that Elon was going to be changed as CEO, Tesla stock went down 4%, right? So the market reacted negatively to the story of Tesla launching their actual robotaxi network in Austin. But it makes perfect sense that it would do that. And this thing's been on self-driving the whole time. FYI, as we're talking about self-driving, this truck's driving me around, right? So it doesn't make any sense to me, all right? And I'll continue to be vocal about it because I just feel like people that are hyping up Uber's capability in the self-driving realm are just counting on companies that make self-driving cars to not do what Tesla does. And what Tesla does gives them a price competitive advantage. And so for Uber to survive in a self-driving world where Tesla is driving the self-driving market from a scale perspective and a price perspective, the only way they survive is if they have super specialized self-driving solutions that Tesla simply can't offer. Oh, you can go from point A to point B at 1,000 miles per charge, and so you'll get there faster. Oh, the car will have a pool or a hot tub inside. You'll be able to sleep. It has a sleeper inside, right? It has to be something that Tesla can't do, where the market is not as price sensitive and they're willing to pay a premium so that Uber can actually make money in that solution, and the self-driving manufacturer, the car manufacturer, will also be able to be competitive from a price perspective because the service or product they offer is differentiated from Tesla. That's the only place where Uber is competitive. I don't see that. Who are those car manufacturers? And that's the thing, manufacturing a car is extremely difficult. Okay, so where are these specialized solutions? I don't see them. So that's Uber's future, but that's a very niche solution, right? It's not like most use cases where people just want to go from point A to point B. Who knows? So I could be thinking about this incorrectly, but y'all tell me in the comment section below. Anyway, June 12th, super exciting. It's going to start to prove out a lot of the theses that Tesla investors have been very passionate about, myself included. So that's very interesting to think through. Then the Mars announcement from SpaceX, that was very fascinating to watch, very inspiring. You can really see that Elon's getting back into engineer mode. A lot of people have been, let's say, less than enthused with his political involvement. I personally am a huge fan because, from my perspective, one of the smartest people in the world, one of the greatest entrepreneurs of all time, one of the best problem solvers of all time. Unleashing him on government to try and make our government better, I don't view that as a negative thing. Does it come with complexities? Of course, it comes with complexities, but I view it as a largely very net positive thing. But other people feel differently, and I completely respect that. And I'm not gonna sit here and try to convince you otherwise. So, but that SpaceX talk was quintessential engineer Elon talking about future, a very positive future through engineering, through technology, and inspiring people, inspiring the troops, inspiring, all the employees there and everyone who's passionate about rocket ships and going to Mars and extending the consciousness of humanity, et cetera, et cetera. It was beautiful, and it was like, it had actual targets for going to Mars, like legit targets. There were dates. We're gonna go on 2026, 2027. We're gonna go back in 2029, 2030. We're gonna go back again in 2032. We're gonna send some humanoid robots there. We're gonna use Starlink for the internet. We're gonna make sure we can go back and forth. We need, so it's like all the different companies are now starting to get tied into the mission, right? And so it was very interesting to think through, the people that have been following Musk's arc for the longest time. Everything that he does on Earth is for Mars. Earth is Mars beta, right? For Musk Industry. And Musk Industry is SpaceX, Tesla, XAI, which is the same company now, X and XAI, Neuralink, Boring Company. There's some sort of intertwining between all of these. And now we're starting to see it come to fruition truly with this Mars mission. It'd be nice to get around the Mars landscape with electric vehicles. Why electric vehicles? You're going to need oxygen to operate an electric vehicle. Whereas with an internal combustion engine, like the one in front of me, the Mazda, which I had a Mazda 6 back in the day, love that car, manual, fantastic car. But anyway, I love my Teslas a lot more, but that car was great. You can't operate a gas car on Mars because you can't make combustion because there's not enough oxygen in the atmosphere. And like the right makeup in the air doesn't work for the engine for the cylinders to fire. So electric vehicles are the only way to get around. Tesla makes electric vehicles by happenstance, and they also make the humanoid robot. Starlink, which is a SpaceX company, but it's internet, and that's how we're gonna be able to communicate on Mars, and that's how Mars and Earth are gonna be able to communicate back and forth, right? They'll send data back and forth or communication or videos. You know, you'll be able to post something on the Mars social media thing and then Earth will be able to see it. It's like, it's gonna be incredible, man. So that's super, super cool, and it's very, very fun. And for people that follow Musk Industry for a long time, it's like a breath of fresh air, you know? It's like, oh, yes. This is why we like Elon. It's because he's out there being super positive about the future, super positive about everything, you know? And like the political stuff for the last, really ever since he bought X, has been like, you know, one way to interpret it is it's been negative, right? Because he's like talking really like negatively about what's going on in the present, and you know, one political party is the devil and the other one is better or great or whatever, you know. And I think from his perspective, and I agree with a lot of this, I think, you know, he saw society was going down the wrong path, and he did what he thought needed to be done in order to go to Mars, right? In order to be able to go there, because there were some, you know, some bad trends happening in society, you know. My opinion, again, you can feel free to disagree with that. And so now the Elon Musk arc is like starting a brand new chapter. In my opinion, it's going to be the greatest one yet for that individual, for Elon. Because there's all these different grand stories starting to coalesce now that we've exited this sort of heavily political time where Elon felt like he had to be super, super close to the political process to ensure that from his perspective, civilization can continue. And of course, there's people going to be like, it's for personal gain, et cetera, et cetera. But without a doubt, he is phasing out of that period, that arc, and now he's entering this new arc, which I'll call his sort of like his greatest arc, in my opinion, which is going to be self-driving cars everywhere, useful humanoid robots everywhere, giving people with disabilities autonomy again with Neuralink, internet everywhere with Starlink, colonizing Mars with reusable rockets, artificial general intelligence with XAI and X, and of course tunnels, right? All of these things, like legitimately all of these things, are going to come to fruition in the next 5 years. It's not going to get done in 5 years, but it will be obvious to at least to people that are paying attention, that this is happening. And they're all going to happen simultaneously. And it's almost like for the last 10 or 15 years, especially through this period of massive amounts of noise and confusion with the political stuff, that foundation has been laid by all those teams, by the Tesla teams, the SpaceX teams, the Starlink teams, everyone, the Neuralink teams, while Elon has been taking arrows and getting the the shit kicked out of him, sometimes for good reason. His teams have been out there kicking ass. And now the foundation has been laid. And now brick by brick, boom, boom. Oh, Austin goes live, great. Self-driving, sweet. Texas now has it, now California, now Nevada, now the United States has it. Oh, China has it too. Oh, Europe finally approved it. Wow, they're in South America, okay? And then, oh, while that's going on, wow, look at these humanoid robots just landed on Mars. Holy shit. Wow, the Starship rocket just came back from Mars and now it's going back again. Whoa. Oh my God, 100 people just got Neuralink implanted in their brain and they all can see now. Or, oh my God, they got, you know, we had Brad who has ALS, who has Neuralink. Now, oh my God, like 1,000 people with ALS are now able to like have some autonomy, and they can control a human or robot with it, one of those bots. Holy crap, they finally can have a little bit of decency and some of their autonomy is back, right? They're not super dependent on a loved one to like always take care of their every single need, you know? Physical need at least. oh my God, look, we can talk to the humanoid robots on Mars because the Starlinks are like, it's like all of this is now starting to happen. And so I really think, I put up a poll on X yesterday, I think, and I'll put the results of it here on the video. But my question was, okay, so out of everyone who has been pissed off at Elon from his latest political stuff, how many of them is he going to be able to regain now that he's on this engineering kick? On this train of building stuff again, Not that he wasn't before in the last few years, but he's clearly being heavily re-engaged with that pathway, which you can tell, you can see it in his face. He's just happier. He enjoys it more. I don't know why. Why would politics be so depressing, I don't get it. And so how many of those people that were initially through this period just dismayed and really upset about what he was doing, how many of them is he going to be able to get back? And is it even material in the long term of things? Now that they see, it's like, oh my God, he's re-engaging in the stuff that I found him super, super sort of inspiring for, right? That's going to be the arc to study in the next 3, 5, 10 years. It's like the re-emergence of Elon Musk, the engineer, Elon Musk, the visionary, Elon Musk, the positive force for humanity, the one who moves stuff forward. And my gut tells me, and again, from a thesis perspective, if I think about the Tesla story, not investment advice, I've always held the position that whatever quote unquote brand damage or personal brand damage he's going to incur, it's not material long term for anything that he's doing, because most people just don't have the time to pay attention to this shit. Most people don't have the time to watch me talk about the nerdiest crap or follow Elon's politics stuff, right? Most people just live their lives and be happy, and they buy the stuff and they do the stuff that makes them happy. But when it comes to the passionate group, the edge 20% of each side, so 40% of the population, of the 20% that got pissed off at him, that still, uses products, but maybe are come on, bro, come on, what are you doing? I wonder how many of those people are going to get re-engaged through this process, especially as Elon has been critical of some of the things that the Trump administration has been doing, specifically around the tariffs and the way Congress has handled the debt deficit reduction. And the debt or deficit reduction has been abysmal, has been a complete joke. And anybody who's in favor of fiscal responsibility for the United States, Congress has let everybody down, to be honest, in my opinion. So anyway, before I go on that rant, that's what I'm looking out for the next 12 months, is to see how the people that were dismayed by Elon's politic involvement will get re-engaged to the story once Elon fully immerses himself back into being that positive communicator instead of the society is collapsing, civilization is collapsing, it's political, I have to get involved, otherwise we're all dead, right? I think it will make a large impact. The media, mainstream media, will likely cover him more positively than they have in the last few years, because there's not going to be that, or let me rephrase that, there's not going to be as many negative headlines. That doesn't mean positive, because he's no longer a target, right? He's no longer a keyword that can be harvested for views and clicks, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that from a business perspective for Tesla, SpaceX, we've learned from the last few years that the market is emotional. Investors are emotional. Human beings are very emotional. It's very difficult to not be emotional, especially when there's repeated blasting by media that Elon continuously feeds in a negative way. It's very hard to be objective and logical and unemotional during those time periods, right? But now we're going to re-enter this phase where a lot of that heavy emotional tone, negative tone, is going to be subdued dramatically as Elon re-engages, especially if the self-driving stuff is super good and it's affordable and it works and it's comfortable and people enjoy using it. The humanoid robot starts doing useful things. We go to freaking Mars. That Mars picture of Starship landing on Mars and the humanoid robots coming out and starting to walk around, and if there's a feed that people can go on and people can watch this live using Starlink technology, this is going to be unbelievable. And that's happening. And that is happening. So that's my video. I've been out for a little bit this week. As you can see, the videos on the channel have been a little bit slower. That's because it was my son's first birthday on Thursday, and we have some family in town. I want to take some time to spend with family and the kiddo. It was fantastic, so nice, and I'm getting back into the groove of things and talk my head off, because I guess that's what my job is now. So that's what I'm doing here. So you're welcome, everybody. I'm back. Okay, super fun. When Robotaxi launches in Austin, I'm going to be making all kinds of content because I'm in this area, so it's going to be very easy for me to go down and do all kinds of tests. That's my story for the day. Thank you very much for watching. Love you guys. Bye-bye.